So what's happening with you? What's the latest in your business?
Well, a few things have been happening. As you recently, I kind of shifted in the mission and my focus when it came to my coaching. And I feel that for a long time, and as we talked before, that I was kind of in my box, right? I've been in my box, I've been in my bubble, and I couldn't even see it until, through time and everything that I've been doing, I just realized that no, have to get out of the box and I have to think outside the box. And more recently, I've been diving in, as you saw, in the more neurodivergence and neurodiversity, especially in the professional space. So I shifted my target or my focus to neurodivergent professionals because, as you know, I am a neurodivergent professional. And it took me a long time to realize that I think differently, I do stuff differently. There's a lot of like systems and processes that I've had built over the years that were different and maybe unnecessary to certain people, but I thought this was the norm, right? I thought that everybody felt this way and everybody thought this way. And it's only when you start noticing these small things that you can really try to take advantage of them. So I feel I've been hitting a really like sweet spot lately. And how about you?
As you know, I recently found out I'm a neurodivergent professional, and you've been really instrumental in helping me recognize the good and the bad, or the opportunities and the challenges that means for me. And I am eternally grateful to you because when I got the tentative diagnosis, it kind of blew me out the water because I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I'm 49. Who gets diagnosed with a lifelong condition at 49, you know? And it for a while I just went down, down, down because, you know, labels are good and bad. You know, labels can either make you feel less than or like you're a disorder or a problem. I mean, the last D in ADHD is disorder, right?
Yeah.
So it had, I was in a space, a mental space where I was questioning my whole life and everything that I've been doing and what it meant and how I was coping and what changed for me that it's now a thing. Whereas before I was just me. And the insights you gave me were priceless for helping me to like pivot quickly and get back to the superhero side of it. So now I totally see the benefits and I recognize and appreciate what I bring to the table as a neurodivergent. And it's some good stuff, you know?
Yeah. Some
It's
really
been
good stuff.
a lovely journey getting to know this side of me and getting to understand new things about myself. You want to
Oh, wow.
share or remind me some of the things you taught me for the listening audience?
Honestly, well, before I dive in some of the stuff and insight that we discovered together, because it was also a journey for me, I do have to say that you also were very instrumental in me discovering and kind of exploring where my sweet spot is, like I mentioned. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate this friendship and this relationship that we have because it's not only do we support each other in a way, but we also bring each other up to a higher standards that we want more and support each other. And that's everything that I want that I do for my clients, but also everything that I want also for me and everybody around me, right? Like I feel that, okay, even if you make it alone, but it's a lot faster to make it with other people. And it's where the support and the community that you build around you is what is going to get you to achieve your goals faster. And actually, if one of you wins, all of us wins, right? So that's kind of the mentality. So thank you for that, for being the awesome coach that you are. And a bit of the insights. It's funny because, as you know, I don't have really an official diagnosis when it comes to what type of neurodivergence I have. I most likely fall maybe on the ADHD spectrum, but it was kind of like a journey, right? Because when I dove into the possibility that I might have been neurodivergent, given my curiosity and some of my learning nature and that level of like, researching and kind of the strengths and everything that I have, I went into a deep dive of what are the subtypes of neurodivergence and what does it mean, and is it really that label like you mentioned that we always get, like it's a disability or it's a learning disability or it's something else, but it's more than that because it's like we said, it's a spectrum. And we have so many different spectrums and so many types. So even if we think about it as, let's say, autism or ADHD, ADD, or maybe some of maybe Tourette's and some of the neurodivergent subtypes that we have, each one of them we have to think about them as tracks, as a spectrum, a whole spectrum by themselves. And then you have to think about where do you fall on it. And then you have to think about also whether your personality traits and some of the other traits that you have, whether you're an introvert or whether you're extrovert. And there's a lot of these traits that blend in, and you get lost in the whole, okay, wait, am I this or am I that? Or am I really a neurodivergent? Or how do I know? And all of these kind of things. And but then when you kind of start noticing your patterns or some of the stuff that you do over time, this is where you start to realize, yeah, I do things a bit differently. Or sometimes in certain situations, I need a bit more structure, or I need more information, or I don't need as much details for this, you know? So you start to notice that, yes, maybe you do fall under a certain category, but then when you start discovering, okay, now I know, let's say I'm, like you mentioned, you recently went through the ADHD diagnosis yourself, and we've been talking about this. It's really when you start noticing, when you start understanding that you have it and how to regulate your systems and how to regulate your emotions around it, that you can start to use them strategically. So now, since you know, for example, how your energy tank is a lot bigger than other people, but we deplete it a lot faster. So that means we need to recharge more. But what happens is that we start, some of us, especially some of the types, depending on the type of ADHD that you have and the type of superpower, let's say, you have, or ability and super skills that comes with it. For me, it's more the processes, it's structure. I need to do like this to be able to get that. I have to build kind of like my own routine, my own system to make something work, for example. So to build that and start seeing that, noticing, we're going to be able to use them strategically, right? So that energy tank, the more we're starting to deplete it, we're trying to recharge it. So what ends up happening is we feel a bit guilty and we start taking away from that recharge, and then we get depleted faster again.
Mhm.
So it's kind of when we start understanding that we need, yes, we have a larger tank, but that means we need more time to recharge, and we need to really figure out how to know our signs, because our cues, our mental cues or our physical cues are a lot different than our other neurotypical maybe counterparts and our colleagues and our friends and some of the people in our networks. And plus, professionally speaking, the more you realize some of the strengths, the more you start realizing why you were attracted to certain jobs, or why you're attracted to certain skills, or why you were really attracted to certain parts or roles, tasks inside your job stimulates you more than others. So when you start building that connections or understanding more yourself about it, the more you can apply it in your life and also in your, in your career. And for me, that blended with realistic positivity, using whatever realistic means we have now to get all the options, or to look at the different options that we have using the realistic means and all the stuff that we currently, as skills, as funds, whatever you want to put, there's no kind of limits, because we can always find a way in what we have. There's always a way. So the realistic positivity combined with the skills development and really knowing our strengths, that's really what I'm trying to help others with. And you get to be part of that because we're friends, and that's something that I do also as part of my daily. So you help me improve, and that's a self-investment also for me, and I help you too. So it goes both ways. But like you mentioned, especially for an adult professional, you've been living all your life, you've been going through challenges, you've been overcoming a lot of obstacles and everything that's happening, and you delivered. Look at everything that you've done to date and everything that you're about to do later. How was it to feel that you might be neurodivergent, or what was it going down memory lane trying to figure out whether, hey, was this acquired or was it something from your past? Was it easily for you to make that link?
I felt like I do with neurodivergent for the first time a couple of weeks or maybe months ago now. And I know I wouldn't have heard it for the first time, but sometimes something comes at you with a freshness
Yeah.
that This is the first time anybody's told me this because it just finally connects with you. The first time it was applied to me, where my actual therapist says she thinks I could be ADHD. I looked at her confused and I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking she fell off the loony bin this time. She surely did. And then I went away for a week and I thought about it. Nah, I mean, how would I have accomplished all this if I had a disability? you know, and it was suspected and has to go for testing. And everything that was being said about him was, that's me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my therapist was right. So it hit me kind of hard because I had to deal with myself. And, my concern for my child has always had a significance that's different from your concern for yourself. So it took me a while for it to totally sink in that I could see this is how I feel or this is how I think. It took a little while for me, but when it hit hard because I'm like, oh my God, it's like it was just mind blowing. And but how this, how that, and then the more you go through that voracious appetite phase where you just need information. And sadly, most of my information came from Instagram because the little videos and the little descriptions and the funny memes really did help lighten the load and the burden of the diagnosis, and it made it, and I mean, just to be clear, I'm not officially diagnosed yet, but everything is fitting. Everything is beginning to make sense for me. So I went through cycles of shock, despair, pride, excitement, variety, if I could say that. It's not a consistent every day you feel like this experience, which could be a little off-putting because, there are times when I feel so lost in a way because, you feel like you don't know yourself because all these years you did not know this about yourself. But then now that you have a framework or a box to put everything in, it's just fitting perfectly. So I have to say that the journey of discovery that I'm still on has its ups and its downs.
Of
But
course.
thanks to you, and that's no flattery. Thanks to you, I've had more ups because even when I'm having a downtime, whereas before I would be in an emotional dip or an energy low, and I would be like, what the bleeps going on? I just have no energy. I'm tired all the time, whatnot. Of course, I could blame everything on menopause, like most people do, because you get menopause at 49, not ADHD, right? It's been interesting. And reframing, I have learned in recent years the power of reframing thoughts, your belief system, what you say about yourself, how you define yourself. Because if you think I'm lazy versus you think I need a specific type of motivation to get stuff done, two different worlds, they're worlds apart. If you
Yeah.
say I need to sleep all day versus I need to recharge in specific doses during the day, in specific ways and at specific times, it gives a different spin on things. So
Yeah.
the benefit of finding out you're neurodivergent means that you could now appreciate who you are and what you need and then give that to yourself. It does wonders for productivity because I can now, thanks to you, tell I'm in a hyper focus. Don't wash dishes in hyper focus. It's like go write a book, go get this important stuff done. And I can tell you there's so many times in my life that in my prime time I was doing something random because this is the time
You
you should
couldn't
do this.
regulate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people tell you wake up and make your bed. You don't realize that making up your bed in your prime time means that by the time you're done making up the bed, there went all your enthusiasm for life. Then you just want to lie in the bed. It's to be able to tune into myself and say, okay, right now, this is what I need to be doing because I now know myself better. Listen, that's been priceless. And it makes me wonder how much better I could have done. Everything that I would have had to intuitively discover about myself and work it out from first principles. If there was somebody to guide me and say, you know what, I realize you're neurodivergent and you are probably going to need this. Because I remember in high school over scheduling myself. I used to make these
Same. because
Beautiful.
you felt maybe
So you can
unproductive
do
if you didn't. You feel guilty if you relax a bit more, even though your friends and your families probably were doing that. Like that's a very interesting thought, Lynn, because like that's for me is the same. Because if I sometimes think like, what if I knew even before that all of the things that I was doing, or some of the behaviors, or some of the things that drove me in different ways, if I would be even better, you know what I mean? If I would have improved. But then I realized that I needed to walk through the journey to get to where I am. And I realized that I changed a lot over the years because the skills and because of the coping mechanisms that I put in place and because of the systems that I built. I feel like that was really fundamental to my growth and my journey. I'm not the same person that I was even last year. And
it.
so if you think about how I was even 10 years ago or back in high school, where, you know, my grades were very questionable, funny enough, and then I ended up in university doing great. Why? It's because the focus, when I start going into something, like we said, that stimulates me, that I'm enjoying more, it kind of brings the best out of us. And we don't realize that, hey, whoa, so that means that back in university, when I went through all of that, that means I did my own systems to be able to
You
actually
did.
succeed, because I enjoyed learning those parts and the interests and the topics. And those topics that I did well, I created a routine for myself to be able to have that information, no matter how uninteresting it is, kind of fit in my brain in a way. And I see that I needed to do all of those to be able to reach where I am today, because now I see it in my everyday career, right? So every time that I'm working, I systems or the routine that I set up in place for my success. And I know that those are driving me even higher too. It's actually driving me a lot closer, but at the same time, it's really shifting, like you're saying, reframing my journey also, because I'm realizing that I don't have to be as rigid as I was in my
Mm.
thinking. I don't have to fit the same way that somebody else did it. Doesn't mean it's the only way. There's other ways to do things. There's other ways where I could succeed. And even if nobody did it before, that doesn't mean that it's impossible to do. It just means that they haven't figured out a way. And I could figure out that way. So instead of looking at it as, hey, I wish I knew before, or putting obstacles in front of me, I now look at it as more like, hey, yes, I could have, but I can only operate from the sense that it's only the information that I had at the time. And now I have so much more. And because of the information I now have, I can do a lot more and do it differently. Is it the right way? Is it the wrong way? Only time will tell. But as long as I have this, let's say, push forward into thinking that there's always a way and I can figure it out, and that believe in my ability instead of letting my negative thoughts and self doubt kick in, that really helps me get out of that label, get out of the box, go out of my creative juices to really get what I want afterwards. So, yeah, I feel like you're right. That was a really important thing. Like, what if we knew before? Well, maybe it wasn't meant for us before, right? Maybe we're meant to know it now
True.
for a reason. And
True.
maybe, yeah, you don't discover ADHD at 49, but because you did, everything now is falling into place, like you said. So now you're seeing that all these patterns that you've had over the years make sense. And now you're seeing why, how you can even use them in the future, right? Now, when you have a bit of like a hyper focus energy burst, you know how to use it appropriately. And if you start building your reward systems or incentive systems, it's even better. When you mentioned the dishes is one of my main chores at home, so I understand. And when I want to do the dishes, the only way that motivates me is, first, it needs to be done at some point. So that's one. And second, I put my system. So I put music in the background. I multitask that, hey, I'll do this now, then I'll be able to do this. And because of this, I'll be able to do that. Or I'll try to do stuff in parallel. It's a win win. So I cook while I'm doing the dishes. So this way I can finish some of the utensils and clean them at the same time, so I don't have some for later. It's just the small stuff, but you build your reward list to get you through. So it's really interesting. But I'm discovering also that a lot of people like us don't know that they might be a neurodivergent adult, and they don't understand it that much, or why they think differently, or why maybe their colleagues are looking at them that way when they say certain things, or why their friends sometimes avoid certain conversation or certain interest. But it's not in a bad way once you start knowing the triggers. So I gave you the example the other day, right? When you're having a conversation, and that's something you will notice at work and also with your friends. So whether in life or at work, where somebody's talking to you and they give you an example, or they're telling you their story or something that happened with them.
I know where you're going.
And then that triggers something for you to be, yeah, I did that. I remember when I went and did this, or I remember when I tried this and this. And you have to share kind of a relatable story. A lot of people who don't understand the neurodivergent, let's say behavior or structure, will see it as more as an, hey, I don't make it about you. This is
Right.
about me. Like, I'm telling you a story. Why are you trying to take it away? But from a neurodivergent sense, and you can see it also from the friends that you're like-minded, they'll understand because they'll match your vibe and they'll share, oh, what did you think of it when you did that? And then they'll continue. And you'll notice that a lot of times there's a lot of unfinished conversations, which, yes.
You know, the thing about it, I won't say who, you know who, but I won't say who. Someone used to accuse me of interrupting him. I would say, but this is what I know as having a conversation. I would just think of all the friends I have conversations like this where you're saying something and I say, yeah, and I say something and then you jump back in, and that's what I know as a dynamic conversation. And when you meet somebody, but funny enough, the person who said this to me diagnosed himself as neurodivergent before I even knew what it meant. So it was weird to me to have somebody saying that I'm interrupting them when I'm just doing what just feels natural and normal to me. But that was crazy. That was really crazy because he managed to hold it back, but I was dying to say when you were talking that this is why I love working with you, because you help me to see things in a way that is way more constructive, way more beneficial, way more realistically positive than the natural bend of my mind. So I said, imagine if I knew this sooner without thinking about it. And then your response made me really reflect. And I had so many excellent neurodivergent coping skills in school. Year one of medical school, I tried doing all-nighters, and I realized that it was a total waste because I spent the whole night forcing myself to concentrate when my brain was like, hell no, I'm gone, bye.
You can't. Yeah.
And that does nothing. It does nothing for you to help you reach your goals or to help you accomplish anything when you're just awake by force and not going anywhere. So I don't think it took me the whole year. Maybe it took me a semester to say, this makes no sense. I'm not doing this again. So I realized that I needed to pay attention to what my body was telling me in terms of how alert I was and how able I am to focus. So I would start studying and I'd realize, okay, I'm getting nothing. I'd say I need to take a nap. And I would take a nap, lie down and take a nap in the all-nighter. And then I would wake up from my nap, drink coffee after I woke up because, the previous semester, drinking coffee to stay awake against all odds did not work for me. So now I wake up, drink the coffee. Now that I've rested, then I am powered to go hyper focus for hours. But when that hyper focus ended, I'm like, okay, nothing's getting in anymore. Time to close the books, go home. Because in the first semester, I would stay up all night, have an unproductive night. And then in the morning, I'm so tired, I missed all of the classes. I mean, I would be physically present, nodding off, learned nothing. So I would have had over 24 hours of zero intake. It was not worth staying awake for. So I figured that out myself, but I did not know, I didn't have a label or a diagnosis or any explanation for it. And it's funny now, like I was speaking to a professional colleague and I said to him, I just found out I'm neurodivergent. And he said, aren't we all? And the funny thing about it is birds of a feather flock together. I am starting to think of all my relatives and friends that I click with. And for years, I've noticed that there was a specific type of people who got me and I got them. When your intuition just go, all like you when you have just clicked.
It's the vibe. It's the vibe. And that's a great example about how you built your system without even realizing what you needed to do. But you had to do it because the only way for you to have moved forward and been
Mm-hmm.
able to even finish and succeed in your courses was to do that. It's the same as me. We built different kind of systems, but it worked for us. And if it works, then why not? But we didn't realize it until now that it's really connected with how different it is for others. Some of the more neurotypical people or individuals are also different. They also think differently. We all think differently, but it's a bit easier to do certain tasks than others for them, similar to how it's easier for us to do certain tasks than others. But it's when you start realizing that maybe certain things are different for you that you really need to start fixing them. For example, for us, we're more in our head. So that
Mm-hmm.
means we can be even more critical on ourselves. Our brains are really thinking 24/7 sometimes, and we really need to figure out certain ways to help them or calm them down or get them to focus or really streamline. And for certain one of us, it's even harder, right? Depending on where you are on the spectrum or how is it, or some of your maybe abilities that you have and some of your limitations as well, because as humans we all have certain limitations and certain strengths, but it's how we use them and how we grow. And I feel like certain systems that we tell are sometimes harmful for us, because when we really try to do certain tasks that aren't really made for us, that's where the hard part is. For example, where we see our colleagues and some of our friends or some of our relatives that are excelling in certain stuff that we in a million years couldn't even do, but we fail to realize that there's a lot of stuff that they cannot do that we excel in,
Mm-hmm.
that we're very harsh on ourselves because we're in it with the way that we really think. And one of the things you mentioned at the start was, even when back in the day, and how you were overworking yourself, you were always scheduling more stuff, whether in high school or whether maybe in university or whether in your time, whether with your courses and how you're studying and how you're doing. It's all of it, but it's all related. It was the same for me, because I didn't understand why I had this much energy if I couldn't deplete it. I didn't understand that it's
Mm-hmm.
because my tank is a bit maybe larger than others, but it's because it's supposed to last me a bit longer than others. Theirs is easily rechargeable. So for them, if they deplete it fast, they recharge them faster, it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
easier than me. It takes longer to deplete. So I thought that I have to spend the same, my energy level is the same as them. So I need to spend that energy level in a day or in 2 days, and then I would be left in 3 4 days without anything. I couldn't learn, I couldn't focus, I was just sad. And a lot of the times you would feel like you're upset because you're feeling guilt and you're feeling shame and you're feeling that you're not good enough and you're not able to perform. But then if
Yeah.
I realize what I did all of in one day, what people
Yeah.
2 weeks, and then I'm like, wait, why am I, what's happening? But I never realized it because I never saw other people, because everybody around me were similar to me. So I didn't really understand why it's different, or why am I supposed, what am I supposed to do? And nobody talked about it, right? And ever since we're kids, we hear all of the stuff about autism and about Tourette's and about ADHD. It's kind of like a bad thing. Don't talk about it. It's a stigma. Your child can't have ADHD. You're a person, whatever, somebody you know. I'm like, wait, what? Why? I don't get it. Like, just because it's a bit different, we're more hyperactive in
Yeah.
certain sense, but we're great at innovation. We're great
Yeah.
at business ideas. Like, how many business ideas can we have in one
Oh,
setting?
good
And
Lord, yes.
this is the kind of things, and you can see also in situations where it's more chaotic or complex,
Mm-hmm.
you feel that the more
Yeah.
neurodivergent people are more calm because
Mm-hmm.
they're able to rationalize and focus that, hey, this is nothing, I'm not gonna die because of this is fine.
You
but
know?
for certain but for certain tasks that are minimal, we go off the chart. I'm like, okay, I can't, I'm overwhelmed. I need maybe 12 hours to not do
I know.
anything. I can't. I need to freeze. I need to just relax and not do anything.
I am only now beginning to come to terms with the fact that my housekeeper helper is going to come in, sweep through the house like a hurricane, except that instead of destruction, she's going to leave cleanliness behind. How does she do that? She picks things up, she puts things away, she washes things, wipes things, cleans things, does things all at the same time. And It's like, how does she do that? But when I am taking in bits of information, like a patient comes into my office and
Yeah.
I am listening to your words, reading your body language, getting energy off of you, getting a intuition vibe about you, even spiritually. I might be hearing downloads about where you're at, what is you need, all at the same time. And it is sometimes, every so often, even I am impressed because I remember not too long ago, a client came in and in her first sentence, I diagnosed her. No kidding. Before she finished her first sentence. So
You
I
know
just
it.
started smiling and I'm like, I'm going to hear you out because I'm not going to jump prematurely and tell you I figured you out and I'm wrong.
How many
But
times did
when
that
she was
happen to
done,
you in your life before you continue that story? How many times did that happen to you where you just walked in and you knew
um,
right away if that person, if it's right or wrong?
I knew it. And the thing is, not knowing where it comes from, I just said, okay, God's speaking to me, which he probably is, but it's uncanny the way it works because sometimes I will tell a client, so let me give you an example. Let's say you're a parent of two kids. She's like, I'm a parent of two kids. Okay. Could have said a work scenario, a relationship scenario, a parenting scenario, but I will always pick the right scenario. And it's very rare. Let's say one time out
Hmm.
of 10, I would choose an example that's not spot on. And they'll say, well, that's not me. I said, well, it's a principle I'm trying to describe. I'm not talking about you here. But like it's one time out of 10, 9 times out of 10, I'm spot on with the example that relates to
It's
this person.
amazing.
That level of intuition and that knowing and the way you can pick up things on different levels. When you started telling me that you had it too, I'm like, because it's been something unique to me, but because of my spiritual background, we've always credited it to God giving you insights, which he probably is, but it's like maybe neurotypicals just have a connection to God. Because when you realize that something is not unique to you, now you start to look at it with a more holistic approach. Speaking of that, let me just have a quick moment to talk about holistic health and how finding out I'm neurodivergent has really impacted my career as a coach because the same superpower you describe in terms of being able to see patterns, that's what I do. That's my whole career in a box right there.
Yeah.
A patient comes in and I am making connections, and I've never thought of it as something special. It's just what I do.
It's
Pull
true.
all things together in an instant, and I will ask questions. In fact, I always had this strategy. Sorry, I'm getting so excited about this. It's getting exciting when you see it working in your favor, and it's a little scary when you don't, right? But oh my gosh, I got so excited, I just lost my thoughts.
Oh, but wait, since you're recovering your thoughts, this was which is honestly funny enough typical of us. But one of the things that you mentioned, Lynn, it's really about like the intuition, right? And we have to on our next topic, we should talk about intuition and really our emotional intelligence and our empath. Okay, we'll talk about that next time. But the point, just to summarize your important point, is a lot of us have that additional emotional empath trigger that when we walk into a room we automatically feel the energy, or if we meet someone for the first time. But then if you own in on it a bit more, so when you start looking, hey, like you are a professional physician, you are, other than now you've had a practice, you've done all of these stuff, and now you're doing it from a whole holistic approach also as coaching, you're adding on. So for you, now you're connecting the knowledge of that empath or that vibe that you have also with the knowledge you've gained and acquired over the years. So you've built that connection. So now the moment when you meet your new patients, it's automatic for you that when you see the way that they're behaving, their nonverbal cues, their verbal cues, and also the knowledge that you might have from them, or some of the scientific, maybe the results, blood work or anything that comes out of it, you're able to put all of this together, whether as puzzles, as connections, you bring it. But the funny part is, and you know what I'm gonna say, it's really our brain takes longer to process. we think a lot faster than we're able to process. So our brain is really churning all of this information, churning all of the information. It takes us a while to connect it, but when we do, we need to blur it out. So we need to regulate it. And this is where the more we discover about ourselves and the more we notice these things about ourselves, the more we can regulate them and support our growth. And it's so vital for me because I went back to a lot of conversations and confrontations that I've had previously in the workspace over the years, and a lot of the previous jobs that I've had and previous careers that I've had. And I noticed that most of the conversations I've had where I had to defend, or I felt like I needed to defend, or I needed to do anything about it, is really because the way that it was either miscommunication or was a projection from the other people, or it was stuff out of my control, but I really took it to heart. And the more that now I'm understanding about myself, the more I'm realizing that the things that I did or said, or the situations that I was in, it's not entirely my fault. It's not really me. It's more like the way that yes, could we have done better? 100%. But the situation also falls into, I think differently, I operate differently, and I regulate differently. So why am I trying to really mimic or copy somebody else's blueprint? Why am I not trying to harness my own skills and the strengths that I have to build in even better systems and help other people understanding theirs? Similar to what you do. You help a lot in your patients into seeing some of the things, the behaviors, and some of the habits maybe that they built that really affected their physical approach and their physical manifestation. So I really love that part of insights, and let's say maybe our callings in life, where we ended up, because of our neurodivergent superpowers or abilities, ended up being something to empower and support also others like us. So I really love that.
Gosh, I'm proud of myself that I was able to let you finish. I'm getting on excited.
We'll wrap it up after this. We'll wrap it up after this, at least for today.
Yes, but the the thing about it, sometimes knowledge is power. A lot of times knowledge is power because, you mentioned that I am adding on coaching. And in fact, I've been doing coaching for years. I just didn't call it that because I had a job and I was trying to do my job, except that my job had huge gaps in terms of what they were asking me to do was not solving the problem they asked me to solve. So I'm like, it doesn't need to be done like this. It needs to be done like this. And of course, like you said, you take longer to process. So my consultations would be longer. But once I got it, I got it. So
That's
it might
it.
take me half an hour, 1 hour, 45 minutes to see one patient. But when I get the answer, I can set that patient for life. So I can't tell you how many patients in the government system, after one visit with me, had a management plan that I would write out in their file. And if everybody else continues with it, and I'd always educate the patient to empower them, say, here, what this
Yeah.
is what you need to do. And any other doctor who tells you differently, I want you to question them in this way. If they tell you, if they want you to go off this course, ask them these questions. So I would give them the power to get themselves back on track. Like I let them know, I can't spend an hour with you every visit. So this investment is for the rest of your life. And go with it. Sometimes I actually give them written notes, a plan. That's where the whole health map was born. I was doing that in the public service. I mean, I shouldn't tell them that because that's not what they wanted me to do. But I knew that for the goals that they said, the health goals that they said they had, what they were doing wasn't going to get them there. And
Yeah.
I can't just see a patient halfway and sleep at night. But with the labels, we're talking about the good and bad of labels. Recognizing the ADHD superpowers in all of this helped me to realize that everybody can't see what I see for a good reason. Because my ability to connect the dots is not everybody else's ability to connect the dots.
Exactly.
It was as
I
simple
love
as
it.
me telling someone about my shoulder pain. He's actually a patient and client and coaching client of mine. It's a friend, so it's been official, but it's not always official. A lot of times he just gets free coaching chatting with me at home. So he kept trying to say, I'm sure you lifted something and don't remember. And I kept telling him, no, I didn't lift anything. And he kept saying, I'm sure you lifted something and forgot. That happens to me all the time. And I'm saying to him,
Yeah.
your work is in transport. You lift things for a living. I don't lift things for a living. The heaviest thing I lift in a week is my handbag. So the days when my shoulder's bothering me the most are not the days that I'm going to the office and lifting the handbag. So I know this is not a physical pain. And we were going back and forth, and I had to explain to him, listen, the mindful observation that I do every day in my life helps me to connect the dots between what I've done and what I haven't done. And I help patients and clients by telling them keep a diary and for 24 hours or for 3 days or whatever period, write down everything in whatever category, whether it's everything you eat or whether it's everything you do. So you have periodic times of reflection and you write it all down so you can go afterwards and look at what happened. So if they're measuring their blood pressure, I always tell them you must have a column for comments. So the
Yeah.
comments will say,
So they can add their notes. Yeah.
right, so what were you doing the time when you got this good blood pressure? What did you eat? Did you exercise? Did you sleep well?
So they can see their patterns.
Different patterns, because I would see the patterns just talking to them, but I'm not with them every day. So that's kind of how I am
Exactly.
confident to get some of my superpowers in a more systematic way. And I would not have been able to describe it like this before working with you. So you have actually added a lot of value to my program and to the way I communicate things. Because I was doing it all along, but sometimes you don't, your food ends up tasting good, but until you know what's the secret ingredient that makes it taste different from everybody else's food, you can't share the recipe. It's not a
Yeah.
repeatable process. Because you may be not noticing that you not putting salt till the end of the dish is what made the whole difference in how the dish came out. Or sometimes it's something small like timing or. So these are the things that these are the reasons I so very much value what you do. And I am so excited for this new niche because this is something that was needed. So empowering to people like myself who are highly functional, high achievers, just to connect the dots of what it is that makes us who we are and why we don't do well in certain situations and why we thrive in others.
We excel in others. Yeah.
That is
100%.
so empowering because now I can better just say no to a particular project and say yes to a different project because I know in that environment, the people, the places, the noise, it won't work for me. I
Yeah.
was supposed to go to a sports and family day yesterday, but my energy was low. And I could easily have seen myself going just to show support to my friend and not recognize that I was killing myself in the process because my whole everything was saying tank low, sleep. And even though I didn't get to sleep during the day yesterday, I
But
was
you
able to
recharged.
replenish
Yeah.
and recharge just by resting.
And Lynn, next time, other than the impasse and intuition that we should cover, how it's really hard for us to see or to take for granted some of the skills that we think that everybody has, but that we don't. We actually, it's a superpower that we have and not everybody around us has, but it's because the people or the reference group that we have are people that are similar to us.
Yeah.
And that might be, and it could be also because we're in our heads, like you mentioned, we couldn't see it from the outside. It's when somebody like a coach or a guide or a mentor can support you and
Yeah.
let you show you, hey, did you notice that you're really good at these kind of things
Yeah.
versus doing this, for example? Why is
Yeah.
that? And
Yeah.
it's really when we start discovering and knowing, seeing our strengths versus our areas of improvement, for example, that we can really move forward. So we definitely need to tackle that next. And I'm honestly excited for us, but I'm also excited for all the people that will benefit
Like,
from
when
maybe other conversations like this, because I feel that this might be the beginning of a lot of different topics when it comes to how we do things and how we might function, or how why we're attracted to certain colors or certain music compared to others. Like seriously, it could be something as basic as that, but it has a lot of meaning, right? It's just that difference or that uniqueness that we have. So thanks so much, Lynn. You're freaking amazing.